The Happy Pear podcast is sponsored by Vivo Barefoot Shoes and Instant Brand Cooking Appliances. To learn about current offers on or avail of any discounts, check out the link down below in the show notes. Okay, want to kick it off. You're a year off alcohol. We haven't drank for 22 years and we found it to be one of the greatest catalysts for our health and well-being in general. How have you found it, the experience for yourself?
It's been amazing. And, we met obviously at an event a while ago. And the thing is, like, I can tell, that you guys so kind of fit and healthy and well, and you look well. And I think this is a look that people have when they don't drink alcohol. Let's be just frank, like you just look really like got color in your eyes, got white eyes, you're just fresh. And I think with me, before I was drinking, I was using alcohol to numb so much stuff that's happened in my life over the last few years, and just also without even realizing it, using it to kind of manage and numb ADHD. We know that, a lot of people with ADHD, around half of all people with ADHD use alcohol to try and manage their symptoms, even if they don't even know they have ADHD. And I was diagnosed about 2 years ago. And I think I had this like switch in my head went, and I realized all of a sudden, like I'm using alcohol for a purpose that's actually just becoming really unhealthy. So I got to a point where it was 20 plus stone in weight. And for context, I'm a 6'3" guy. So I'm a tall guy, but I've always been quite muscular, played rugby, but lean, right? Fit and strong and lean. And I was 20 stone, and I didn't exercise anymore. I ate rubbish. I had no energy, and I'm a very energetic person, a very driven person. And I realized that alcohol was just being used for all the wrong things. And also I'd say, people think, oh gosh, you must have been drinking all the time. I was drinking 3 nights a week, which is pretty, like, I'm not saying, I use the word normal very careful here, but it's very common in London, for example, for people of my age, in your late 20s and early 30s, drinking 2 or 3 nights a week, 4 or 5 pints in the pub. But the knock-on effect of those drinks was huge. So yeah, I just stopped the 4th of December. 2022. I had the whole of 2023 without drinking. I still don't drink. I don't really have an interest in alcohol, and it's changed my life. I mean, it's been, I cannot put that in any way that is less encapsulating of how I feel. Like, I don't want to underplay it. It has changed my life. I've lost 6 stone. The fittest, strongest.
6 stone. Congratulations. That's immense. You can really see it in your face. You can really see it in your face. Like you've got huge definition in your face. Whereas I saw a photo online of you before, and it was a bit rounder.
Yeah, I listen. I was 20. Like, let's put it how it is. I was obese. I was huge, and I'm not being nasty towards size. I've always been about body positivity, and I'm very kind and compassionate to who I was. I mean, I look back with compassion to that person, and I think a lot of the time people think, oh, I need to lose weight. It's just, it's how I look. And actually, no, like, be compassionate to yourself. Like, I was a very hurt person, and I was gone through a lot, and I was in that place, and food and alcohol was playing a role for me. It was doing something in my life, and obviously that I got to a point where I wanted to change that. But I don't look at myself back then and think, oh, you're any less worth what you are now, or that you're any less lovable. I just see myself then and understand the pain, and like now I'm just in a very different place. And the thing is, for me, the biggest thing was never to think about the weight. I never weighed myself throughout. I never counted calories. All I did, the only thing I restricted was alcohol. The only thing I removed was alcohol. I filled my plate for as many colors as I could. I ate as much food as I could to nourish my body. I basically focused on fueling my body and being like, right, I want to eat like as much stuff that is good for me. And like, I think a lot of the time when you get into a restrictive mindset, what happens is that it becomes a punishment to yourself. And that's just such a stupid thing. And it's a fundamental reason why diets don't work. I mean, the science is that diets don't work because people, unless you make a genuine life change that is sustained for your life, you will revert to your previous state. And there's a lot of studies have shown that, is that people that go on diets often end up being as heavy or bigger than they were before. And that's because it's always something that is goal driven and time, caught back with time, or like, controlled by time. Whereas when you focus of like, right, I want to be this, what kind of person do I want to be? Well, I want to be fit and healthy, eat well, have energy, feel good, be happy. When you look at that as a goal rather than weights on the scales or calories or a certain body type, all of a sudden it changes. People mess with me going, oh, Alex, you're ripped, and you're so fit and you're so strong now. And I'm like, yeah, but that's just like part of the lifestyle of my. It's not the end goal. It's just the part of what comes with enjoying exercise, enjoying food. So yeah, sobriety has been amazing for me. I've loved it. And yeah, I love talking about it, really.
And what would you say to anyone who's listening that goes, that sounds really interesting? Like, what piece of advice would you give them to get started on this journey? And not necessarily give up, but even just reflecting on it or taking a break or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you guys have doing for like over 20 years. You've done it for a long time. And in a way, I look up to, people look at different stages of it. I look up to you guys, and like I want to be 20 years in and be like, I've done 20 years without this. Like that's where I want to get to, which is really exciting for me. So I really look up to you and see what you've done. And I think I'd imagine a lot of what you've achieved and you've been able to do together, with as a business, but also with your families and like the fitness and everything you do is probably, I'd imagine, part of the package, like we say, it's part of the lifestyle of someone that doesn't drink. And I think I'd say to anyone that's thinking about it, just give it a go. I've never met anyone that's regretted going alcohol free. And if you don't like it, you can always drink again. I think it's always worth trying. And a lot of people would say, well, I don't want to give it up altogether. And that's cool. And I wouldn't ever stand here and go, I'm never going to drink again. I don't know what the future holds. One thing I think I'm pretty sure of is that it's changed my relationship. Like if I did drink again, it would be a very, very different way as the past. But to be honest, I don't really have an interest. Right now, I get up each day and I'm like, cool, I'm happy. I went out on Friday night. My friend had a housewarming party. He's got his first ever house or flat in London, a flat.
Good on him.
Good on him. He's done really well. And I went to that. I went to a brewery afterwards. I had alcohol-free beer. And I got up the next morning. I felt completely fresh. I went to the gym. I went for brunch. I saw another friend. I read books in the afternoon and felt amazing. Like, why would I not want to give that up? So I'd say to anyone listening, like, give it a go. Like, I never thought I'd be a person who was alcohol-free. I just never. I grew up in Wales, played rugby, went to med school. We drink quite a lot. I just thought, like, it's just part of my life. But yeah.
And what was it initially that made you question your relationship with alcohol? Was it the fact that you were feeling unhealthy in your body and you thought, right, let's try something different? Or like, was there any one moment, or did it just slowly dawn on you?
There was a moment. I think there was over time, but there was just like a moment towards basically, I look back on my life and think a lot has happened. I grew up in West Wales. I went to, my family are from very humble beginnings. Like we've known that went to university from my family. I really wanted to be a doctor, applied to med school. It took me a while to get in, but I got in. I went to uni at Exeter, so down on the south coast of England. And then when I graduated, moved to London. And I loved my job. I loved what I was doing. But a lot of living in London came with like drink and alcohol. And I probably drunk quite a lot more because of that. But I enjoyed my mid-20s. And then I went on that show, Love Island, when I was in 27-ish, that's 2018. And since then, my life has been a complete roller coaster. I've had the most unimaginable highs almost, but also the most difficult of lows. Going on Love Island shook me in many ways. I mean, you go from someone who has 200 followers to 1 million followers. Now I've got 2 million followers and, I'm way more known than I was then, but the growth from there has been much more steady from 1 to 2. And I have done that in a very controlled way that I feel I know what I'm doing. Whereas I went in about 9 weeks from 0 to 1 million. And I think, that what that does to a young boy, like a young man really is crazy. So that shook me. I then, was working in the pandemic and I was one of the doctors that were sharing everything that we were seeing in the pandemic from the front line. I worked in hospital, Lewisham Hospital in London. And we were so hard hit. I was working every single day, but I was on BBC News, doing YouTube, I was doing Instagram, everything, telling everyone what was going on. And then at the end of the pandemic, when I was going to go back to my family in Wales and see them for the first time in like a year, my brother, I got a phone call from my dad and my brother had taken his own life. He died by suicide. He's a 19-year-old boy who's had a place at medical school in Stampton. He wanted to follow my footsteps. It was 10 years between us. We were very, very close. And he was gone. And, all of a sudden I was like, boom, hit by this thing on top of many other things that had happened in recent years. And yeah, I think what did I do? As my natural instinct is to work hard and to bury the pain. So I worked hard. I decided to campaign in mental health and got, campaigned to the government to make changes and said, look, why don't you come and be a volunteer as a mental health ambassador? And, we can look at what you can do. And I never looked back. I just worked so hard in that space, hard in everything that I've done. But I never dealt with the pain really. And so I guess the alcohol was part of that numbing. And eventually I realized there came a day where I was like, looked in the mirror and I looked in my eyes. Actually, the day was I was down in my hairdressers and I was cutting my hair and I looked in my eyes in the mirror and I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like I don't recognize myself. I was like, I actually have lost myself completely. And that was the moment that just like a click of the fingers almost in my mind. I was like, that's it. And I never looked back. 4th of December, I stopped drinking. And It's been a very painful year. 2023 will always be, I think, the most painful year of my life, because even though there wasn't necessarily the big things that happened that year, I had to face the pain. So from heartache to grief to the pandemic to grieving over the person that I'd become, I had to face that last year. But it means that going into this year, I feel energized. I found myself again. I'm in a great place and I'm excited.
Jeez, wow. Remarkable. And when you talk about like that 2023 being so difficult and yet you didn't have any one big external event, I think giving up alcohol for me was that it made me not numb myself and made me actually, am I being true to my word? Am I being the person I want to be? You got to sit with that uncomfortableness, that kind of awkward moment. You got to sit with it and see what comes up. And yeah, I found that to be one of the greatest catalysts for becoming a better version of myself and having a better relationship with myself.
Did you find as well over the years with your experiences of sobriety that you have to not just be honest about the person you are, but also how you're spending your time? Like, you always hear people like, oh, it's boring not drinking. The truth is, if you're finding it boring not drinking, it means your life is boring. That's the honest thing. And I'm not talking about before anyone goes, oh gosh, oh yeah, not everyone could be. I'm not talking about going out living YOLO, best life, going on amazing holidays all the time. I mean, like, it's learning to be able to sit by yourself, to be able to read, to be able to go outside and walk, to find enrichment, enjoyment in your life. Like, if your life feels boring, it's because your connection with your life is lost. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I do simple things every day. I don't have a crazy, like, people might think I'd have a crazy life doing all this. Honestly, my favorite thing is go to the gym, go for a run, go for a walk with my dog, read books, chill, watch movies. And I love it. I'm not bored at all. I love it. But if you do find your life boring and you need alcohol, then that's quite a big thing. I don't know what you think, but you have to really like focus on your own life and like build enrichment in your own life. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Even a good barometer is if you're comfortable enough to go to the cinema by yourself and just go have a date by yourself and not feel self-conscious, not feel worried and be at ease. Like, I think that's a good barometer of being comfortable in yourself and not looking outside of yourself. Like, I always find that.
No, that's
when's the last time you went in the cinema in your
own? I'm a twin, so like I'm a different to normal. But my wife goes to the cinema all the time by herself.
Have you ever gone to the cinema on your own?
I went out by myself a couple of times. I remember being in Sweden and I went out meeting people by myself, so I have. But as an identical twin,
counts.
I was going out to meet, to go out and see if life. Anyway, right, we're going to stop there before I dig myself into a further hole.
But no, I can tell you.
Thanks for hanging me, Steve.
Well, let's call a spade a spade here.
There was one thing there on another note that you mentioned, diagnosing yourself with ADHD. I'd love to know more about that, because I see that in my own life. More and more friends are getting diagnosed as adults, and I'm wondering, like, what motivates you to do that, and what is the benefit of now having the diagnosis? As you may know, we're Instant brand ambassadors. We adore their kitchen appliances. They're super, super useful. We're very grateful to anyone out there who's used our affiliate link over the last year.
It really does help.
And if you are considering it and on the fence, this offer could get you over the fence. They're giving up to 50% off until the end of January of certain appliances within their catalogue. It's amazing. I use their Instant Vortex air fryer all the time. It's got 2 drawers in it. I use my Instant Pot Duo Plus regularly to make dals most weeks, or curries or chilies. And I set it to come on most mornings to make my oat groats while I'm down swimming at the sea.
To learn more about their amazing offer, which lasts till the end of January 2024, click the link below in the show notes.
Yeah, so I basically all my life kind of questioned whether I did habits. Like I'm someone that is quite hyperactive, but I have incredible focuses of attention on things that I'm interested in, but complete lack of attention on things that I am not. For example, or things probably. Interest is a little bit more complex. It's probably things that are genuinely useful in that moment. Like, for example, I can't remember my own mobile number. It takes me like 2 years. I changed my number 2 years ago, and I probably only just learned my number. But I could, when I used to work in the ward on the hospital, I have like 25 patients in the ward. I could tell you every single blood test each of them had, of 20 blood tests, what the numbers were, how they changed in the last few days. Like my memory for things that I need to remember, want to remember, is really, really strong. And like that attention is great, but when you're at school, it's not good at all. I mean, I couldn't concentrate in class. I got kicked out of class and all this kind of stuff. I think also ADHD is not just about attention. It's so much about your relationship with yourself, your interactions with others, the way that you see the world. I mean, the thing about ADHD, when it comes down to it, it all comes down to this dopamine deficit. And dopamine is reward hormone and hormone, really. We've got four main ones. Dopamine's job is basically to give you a sense of fulfillment and reward. Like if you guys, you mentioned before we started that it was cold and you wanted to get outside, do some pull-ups, and you probably felt good afterwards. You had a bit of a boost from that. You feel good, you feel fulfilled, endorphins there a little bit, but dopamine gives you that sense of reward. Or, if you sit down, you do a task and you get your jobs done for the day, dopamine, you feel great, you feel good about it. You also get dopamine from things like food, and particularly sugary food and alcohol. And that's where there can be real issues with ADHD, is you get dopamine from lots of places. But in ADHD, you have a dopamine deficit. And what this means effectively is that we are constantly looking for dopamine. So when you haven't got much dopamine, it makes you perhaps agitated, it can give you anxiety, it can make you uneasy, it can make your concentration being poor. It can also make your mood really up and down as well, because your mood becomes attached quite strongly to reward. And that sense of peace that a lot of people have, you don't have as easily. So throughout my life, I realized that I basically took a lot of risks, which if you think about even the things I've told you about, I take huge risks. I'm someone that puts myself out there. I'm very grateful for that, as I've lived, I'm nearly 33, and I've lived a very rich life, I think, because of that. I've already tried so many different things in my life, but there are negatives. And also with it as well, I always found that like food, I could binge eat very easily, or like my things with alcohol was there, very easily. And I think in my late 20s, I was like, why don't I just find out if I have it? And then if I have it, maybe there's something I can do about it. So I went to the psychiatrist, and it takes quite a while to be diagnosed, but they're like, yeah, you've got pretty barn door ADHD. And it's been one of the biggest things, honestly, that has changed my life. And the reason actually that I went to get the final diagnosis was because I had Toddler T, who's a very famous DJ. He's married to Annie Mac, which many people will know. So Toddler T is, producer now, and I had him on my podcast, the Stompcast. We go walking with a guest, and I kind of take a wander into their life, really find out about their lives and try and pull out things that are helpful for listeners. And the premise is we get people walking while they're listening. And I spoke to him, and he got diagnosed with ADHD, and he'd been using alcohol to numb his ADHD. And when he went alcohol free, and when he learned about ADHD, it changed his life. Like he completely had a complete different outlook, was calm, was peaceful. And I just was like, oh my God, like this is me. Like I need this, I want this for me. And so when I got diagnosed, that then with knock-on effect also was around sobriety. Like it was one of the factors that played into going sober. And it's changed everything because I understand myself better. I make better decisions. Like, because I know I'm impulsive, I go, right, rather than making yes or no now, I put a week, either 24 hours, a week, or 2 weeks, depending on how big the decision is. If I get an email from my manager saying there's a brand opportunity, I'm like, oh yeah, I quite like the idea of that. I might give myself 24 hours. But if it's like, oh, I need to get a new car, I'll say 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it just stops me from making impulsive decisions. I've also learned how powerful meditation is, exercise. I've just fallen in love with running over the last year. I literally love it. It's amazing for it. And I think the point is that the reason it's benefit knowing, even in my 30s, is because when you know something, you can control it. It's like the analogy of like, if I said to you both, you sat there now, think about your breathing. I want you to focus on your breath. When you become aware, you start controlling it. And it's the same kind of principle that you can only manage something or make a change when you become aware of it. So yeah, it's been huge for me. And like so many people I've spoken to in the ADHD community, both online and in person, have said the same thing. It's like, when you understand yourself, you start accepting yourself. Like I understand that I can't change every part of me, but many parts I wouldn't want to. Like I do think ADHD, parts of it is a superpower. I would not be here sat talking to you guys now if I didn't have ADHD. I'm certain of it. I wouldn't have taken the risks. I wouldn't have that drive that you get. Like I get that when I'm excited about something and I'm focused on something, you get that laser focus we talk about. It's like a drug. Like I'm so driven. Like I will push through any mountain, to get to where I want to get to. And I love that. I wouldn't want to lose that. But equally, it's nice to feel at peace sometimes too.
Yeah, a friend has it and he calls it attention deficit advantage. Like he's far up the scale and he's like a laser beam when he's got his eye on something. Like it's just.
And then what way, when you have a dopamine deficit, is it that you're constantly drawn towards high
potential dopamine releases?
Yeah, and just like you're looking for high stimulation. You're continuously looking for high stimulation. Like just normal, boring things like a walk or normal, ordinary, mundane, but peaceful, content things wouldn't suffice. Like you're just looking for that big rush continuously.
So interestingly, you look for the big. So what happens is that it's got a roller coaster effect. So you're hunting for dopamine rewards, but the problem is when you get into that cycle is that when you get the bigger the high of the dopamine, the bigger the drop. And ironically, what you learn with ADHD is actually you need to go against the impulse and do the walks, the meditating. The exercise is a big lift, but do the things that will give you microdosing of dopamine. So your impulse will be to do the big swings. But when you learn about ADHD, you go, actually, I know that's not helpful. Or if I'm going to do, dopamine driven things like, oh yeah, I want to start a business or whatever it might be, I need to surround that with more gentle, nurturing, mindful ways of getting your dopamine raised and keeping it up there. So, one of the things interestingly, so if I went out and so if I ate a chocolate bar, right? Chocolate bar sugar gives you loads of dopamine. You feel so much dopamine when you eat sugar. But when you look at the dopamine levels after eating a chocolate bar, it shoots up, but it crashes down, almost like the sugar crash. It crashes down. Interestingly, when you do things like running and exercise, it shoots up, but it glides down. Same with ice baths. So if you have an ice bath, it rises high, but it's like a sail, call it the sail sign. It shoots up and then it glides down the other side. So often the healthy ways of getting dopamine give you a much more stable wave of it. So that's one of the things I've definitely learned about that's really, really helped me. So I get up in the morning, I go for an hour walk with my dog, then I do my day and my work and things. And at the end of the day, I do exercise. And I do exercise at the end of the day, like weights, because it gives me that nice lift of dopamine and then like gradually drops towards bedtime. And a lot of this stuff is so simple. It's not that difficult, but if you don't know about it, you won't know how to use it. And when I was younger, I had no idea about this. So I'm just chasing dopamine, like running around for dopamine, getting these amazing highs, but huge crashes. And surprise, surprise, it made me feel rubbish.
And would going on Love Island be one of those big?
Yeah, I mean,
I can imagine it's a huge surge.
Exactly. I mean, it's exact. And it's interesting if you look at, there's a lot of research that shows that CEOs of companies, people in high positions, doctors, high flying lawyers, all these lots of people that have got into positions that requires a lot of risk or the ability to put yourself out there. Often it tends to be people with ADHD, but you also find that the people that suffer the most burnout in these positions are people with ADHD as well. It's a very common thing because you're chasing this dopamine so much that it is a detriment to your body. But we talk about burnout a lot, and I mentioned it a few times, so I might just dig into this a little bit. Burnout is something that we're seeing more and more, and the important distinction between that and stress is how long it goes on for. Like stress is important, and we all need to have the ability to feel stress because if you guys know that there's something going on in the business, you need to fix it, you need to feel some stress to sort it out, right? You need to fix, job done. If you don't have stress, then you basically don't care about it, right? So when we feel initial bit of stress in a moment, we get a rise of cortisol and adrenaline, we deal with it, and that's fine. And that can last a day or so, and it should come back down once that problem is dealt with. If it goes on for a few weeks, then you enter this kind of chronic state of stress. Your body is in this heightened state, which is not healthy. And if that continues for weeks, months, or even years, eventually your body will cope with it for so long, like a flat line, and it'll drop off at cliff edge. And that dropping off the cliff edge where your body and your mind, your emotional, physical, and mental health, when all of that starts to give up, that is the burnout. You're basically unable to keep up with the pressure and the stress, and you feel like, oomph. It feels very similar to anxiety, to depression, and just to sadness, really. And we should, if you feel burnout, and I've had burnout in the past, of course it's fixable. You have to step away from what's causing the burnout. You need to look at your coping mechanisms. So causes of stress are called stressors, stressors, and the response mentally, physically, and emotional that you feel is stress. So we've got to look at our coping mechanisms and what the stressors are. And if you deal with those and you adequately change them, say for me, looking at alcohol, looking at exercise, looking at good health coping mechanisms, but also for me this year, I mentioned at the start, big thing for me is I really want to live a little bit more this year. I'm reducing the amount of stressors. So when you do that, then you can go back to work or go back to whatever you're doing, and hopefully you don't experience burnout again. But it's a frightening thing. I mean, have either of you felt that? Have you had burnout before where you felt like bump like that? Have you been okay?
One thing that we find fundamental to our health is really good footwear. The only footwear we wear is Vivo Barefoot. Back a number of years ago, probably about 7 years ago, friend Tony Riddle said, lads, what foot size are you? And I was like, what do you mean, Tony? He said, I'm going to get you a pair of shoes that are going to change your life. I was like, come on, it's a pair of shoes. He got us these black Vivo Barefoot shoes. And since that day, the only shoes I wear, whether I'm on the farm, whether I'm going running, whether I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I only wear Vivo Barefoot shoes.
So much so, last night we had a party and it was a fancy dress party and Stephen wore a tux and he wore his black Vivo Barefoot
Normally
shoes.
I wear you got to wear those pointy kind of dress shoes with a heel on them, and my feet normally hurt afterwards. And I was wearing these cool, I think they're Addis is the style, and I felt like I wanted to go skateboarding. Like I felt cool in them and groovy. I think wearing Vivo Barefoot shoes, studies have shown that if you wear Vivo Barefoot shoes for 6 months, your foot strength will increase by 60%. You get more feedback from the environment and they encourage you to move more.
As we were saying, they're the only shoes we've worn for the last 7 years and we've sought them out and become good friends with them. They're an amazing business, a B Corp business, and really about doing the best that they can do as a business to better the world. They've offered you 15% discount off any Vivo Barefoot shoes. They have a full range of women's, men's, kids in all different styles. Simply use the code HAPPYPEAR15 at the checkout. And really, we found it to be so beneficial for building strong knees, hips, backs, and for general. I really find it helps me move more and feel more at home in my body.
And what will that code give you?
It gives you 15% discount off any pair of Vivo Barefoot shoes. Just go to vivobarefoot.com.
And use the code HAPPYPEAR15 to get 15% off. Now, we're kind of fortunate in that we have each other as a kind of barometer. I guess the good thing is that the other person will say, listen, you're stressed, go have a swim, go for a run, go do some exercise to let it out. And at the same time, because there's two of us, you can also be blindsided. You can both go down a cul-de-sac together and go, whoa, we're going the right way, great. Then in the end you go, oh shit, right, we should have gone in this road.
But I'd say because we've had 20 years in the health food space, the health and wellness space, we've kind of, because we're front and center in it, we've created pillars in our life that just really, even when things are going full on, you're still swimming in the sea every morning, you're still moving lots, and we both don't drink, so we go to bed at 9 o'clock. So you've got sleep, you've got movement, you've got lots of friends and community, and you've got purpose. So even if it is full on, you've still got a lot of anchors there to, for well-being to persist. So neither of us have experienced it like others.
And the not drinking is a huge thing. There's a huge myth that alcohol reduces stress. I mean, this has been scientifically proven that alcohol raises levels of cortisol in your body. So alcohol actually makes you stressed. So if you're stressed already and you're going to the pub at the end of the week after a busy week and drinking alcohol, the feeling of dissociation you feel, don't confuse that with not feeling stressed or that it's reducing your stress, because that's not true. It increases your cortisol level. So on an inflammatory, on a microvascular, on a cerebral level, it's causing stress. And actually, if you don't drink, your capacity is therefore higher. I mean, there's I'm doing a master's in public mental health at the moment, and there's a really interesting module that they look at in terms of staff well-being, and it's useful for individuals as well. And it's called a job demand resource model. And the idea is that every job will have demands and every job will have resources. What demands mean is anything that is stressful or puts stress on you, that might be challenging, that requires your energy. And resources are anything that energizes you. They can be resources in literally things that you're able to use to help with work, but they also are friendships in the workplace, things like your salary, work benefits, being able to have time off, having adequate holidays, all those things. So it's interesting when you apply that to your own life, because then if you think like you don't drink alcohol and then you do your exercise, you do a swim in the morning, you're out in the sea, you've got each other, those are all amazing job resources. They build your resilience towards burnout much, much higher. And then on the other side, the balancing scales, you've got your job demands. And obviously, if that demand increased, eventually your resources will burn out. But if, like you guys are, and like what you've talked about, you've got a very high resource, you're much more resilient against the demand. And that's a really important thing. And that's why I argue with people to say, look, I know life is busy. Life is never not busy. You've always got things to do, but there's nothing more important than your health. And in fact, if you look after your health will look after everything else. That's so important, isn't it? If you look after your health, you're fundamentally better at everything else in your life, everything.
Totally agree. 100%
Many
agree.
people don't have the self-love though to actually look after it. Ultimately, I think So many of our decisions in modern day life are predicated by how much love we feel for ourselves, because typically it's the person who doesn't feel that much self-love can often make the less healthier choice because they don't love themselves enough. So I think ultimately, and often this is as a result of the family that we're born in, so ultimately it's quite difficult. It takes huge consciousness and awareness to change.
You got to have, it's why that is a famous quote that I love. I wrote it in my first book, Live Well Every Day. It's from a German philosopher called Nietzsche. And he said, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. And it's kind of very true in every aspect of your life, in the sense that when you have a why, when you have purpose, when you have value in your life, you'll see the meaning in everything and you'll see the reason to do things. But, if you don't feel purpose and you don't love yourself, why would you care about sleep, exercise, nutrition? You're not going to care, are you? Because you don't care about yourself and you don't love yourself. And actually, with me a year ago, with Alex a year and a bit ago, I didn't love myself. I felt awful for so many different things that happened to me or happened in my life, and I didn't feel self-worth. And the first thing I had to do was find the self-worth, and that's where a lot of the pain was last year. I had to go through a lot of processing, a lot of dealing with things that have happened, also facing my demons and things that I would do differently and look back on, and all of that, and dealing with all of that, allowed me to find my worth and value. And then once I found that, as you say, that's when you go, actually, I deserve to go for an hour walk in the morning. I deserve to care what I eat and to enjoy reading. Like, I love just now put my phone down, and like, the phone's going down. I don't need to do, I'm going to read now. It's my time. But I wouldn't have had, like a year and a half ago, I wouldn't have had the self-worth to go, like, I deserve to sit down and read for an hour, and I shouldn't be disturbed. I want to have my own time. But now I see that, and I see the value in that. So I would say to anyone listening, like, if you feel like I did before, like, be kind to yourself, be compassionate, but know that, you do deserve all of those things, and you deserve self-love, but start gently and just question that little why, like, why don't I deserve that? And, start finding your corner within yourself.
Beautiful. You said last year was a really tough year because you had to deal with all these, the challenges which had been accruing over the previous, 5 years or in the past anyway. What did you find as some of the most useful tools or techniques that really, like, when you were in the ring, fighting those demons, like, what things really helped lift you up and bring you out of the challenging situations?
One of the biggest things, mindfulness and like mind hacking, and working on my my mindset was the biggest things, like just trying to change the way that I see the world, going from almost like a victim mentality to like, things happen to me, things have happened in my past, but that doesn't have to define my entire future. And funny enough, it's where, so myself and Bear Grylls, who's obviously a very famous adventurer, Paul McKenna, one of the kind of fathers, I guess, of modern psychology, and a few others, we got together and we started this mental fitness app for men called Mettle, METTLE, so Mettle meaning resilience. And we started it because we think that fundamentally, especially for men, you've got to like learn that permission part hugely. Like, a lot of men just don't want to, like, it's really interesting. If you look at studies that a lot of men don't want to engage in mental health stuff. They don't see necessarily the value of working on mental fitness. And a lot of it doesn't come from like an ignorance at all. It comes from like, I've got work to do. I've got the responsibilities. I need to put my family first. You have to almost like see the value of like working on these things. So one of the biggest things for me last year was working on that. I do every morning, I do mindfulness. I use Mettle myself, the app, and we do within that, you get prescribed an activity for the morning based on your own metrics. You use AI to look at what you need. And then I do that in the morning, gets me the right mindset and stuff. I go about my day, and the evening I do it for sleep as well. And, I honestly would say to people, like, if you're going to work on one area of your life, one area of health, start with your sleep. Like, honestly, the studies are pretty obvious that people that sleep well live longer, have better relationships, and are more disease-free. And if you sleep well, you make better decisions, you eat better, you exercise more, you engage in better activities, you just make better decisions in your entire life. So it's an interesting one. But going back to that point, you have to work on the mindset first. And, that's why we've developed this app, Mettle. We've launched it in November. It's doing really well. Men are loving it. And obviously women can use it as well. The reason we've designed it for men is because there's 20,000 apps out there for kind of health, and not one of them really is designed specifically for men. And there's so many barriers for men using it. And the reason that men will engage in mental fitness is very different for women. So what we've done is deliberately design something to remove those barriers, gamify it, make it designed for the things that men want, and make it really, really to the point. So you need to use it really for 4 or 5 minutes a day to get the benefits. And yeah, just working on that. I like doing things in my life. Like you've seen, all the kind of things I talk about and do, they're all kind of born really out of maybe selfishly my own experiences. And therefore, when I believe in something and I'm like, this is something that's helping me, I then think, well, it might help others. And I love that. I mean, it's exactly, similar to what you guys do, really, right? You're passionate. You literally live and breathe the stuff that you do. It's why you've been so successful with it. And you can feel when we met, a couple of months ago on that night, and we were at that event with food and stuff, like you're so inspired and you enjoy what you do. And therefore, that's like a infectious bug, isn't it? You pass it on to other people.
Wow.
Yeah, totally.
Metal sounds brilliant. What are some of the pillars of metal? Like obviously mindfulness.
Mental fitness is a great word. I love that word. I haven't heard that word before. And yet
well, the thing about mental fitness is great that it means that there's, fitness generally you've got to show up every day and do something. Whereas, it sounds like activity-based mental fitness. Like it's a nice connotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we think of physical fitness. Why don't we've got physical health and mental health. We've got physical health. Why don't we have physical fitness? Why don't we have mental fitness? It's like the analogy I really like is that, you guys love working out, right? Imagine now you both said, right, I've completed physical fitness now. I can do loads of pull-ups. I can do a bit of weights and swim in the sea. How many weeks would it be before your physical fitness falls down? A couple of months, maybe. You'd lose a lot of your fitness, wouldn't you? You did easy, Alex. What are you talking about? I haven't completed fitness in my life. I never need to go to the gym again for the rest of my life. No, we know that's not true, but we don't think of mental health in the same way. And the good news about mental fitness is it doesn't matter where you start from. It matters about turning up each day, working on it and building it up. And you can get better when you get up there to a good place. You can stay there. So the idea of mental fitness, a lot of it ties into the physical stuff you do, like exercise and so on. But the app is specifically focused on the mind hacking, mindfulness side of it. So what that really means is when you download Metal, you go onto it, you fill in a questionnaire, which is from the World Health Organization, assesses your state of mental well-being. Then the app uses AI based on your answers, looking at what you need, and it prescribes you activities for each day to. And what we know about men from studies is they don't like to have loads of choice, like choice paralysis. I mean, I hate, you go on a website and you Google like at a sofa and you've got 20 sofas, 30 sofas. No one wants to look at 30 sofas. You want to know with the sofa you need the size, the shape and color that you want for your place. Like you filter it right down. So what this does is it basically looks at what you need. Well, do you need more sleep? Do you need to work on your confidence? Do you need to work on your mental resilience? And then it prescribes activities you do each day and you just follow them. Some of them are breath work. Some of those are mind hacking. Some of them are listening to inspirational quotes. It's one of those things that we've all been there. When you get up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning, you're in a bad mood, it affects your entire day. So what the Metal does is it gets in there at the start of your day, gets you in the right frame of mind to approach the day in the right way. So you have that knock-on effect. And when you come to bed in the evening, you do your sleep activity, get yourself in a good place for sleep and you rest. And what we're seeing is that over weeks and months, people are feeling calmer, happier, less stressed, more capable, more confident, and more resilient. And that's what we're seeing as results. And that's just so exciting because, ultimately, the world is better with happier and healthier men in it. It's not just men that benefits from good men's mental fitness, it's everyone. Because I say to women, you might not be a man, you're a woman, but I'm sure that you have men in your life that you love and care about. And if you knew that they were happier and healthier, wouldn't that be a good thing? And so it's been amazing seeing how many women have supported us, actually, and sent it to their brothers or their friends, their husbands, or parents and stuff. It's been an incredible journey so far, I must say.
Amazing. Well done with it. Like literally I had down here, what about like mental health? Because you're a huge mental health advocate and men is the one group that I don't think there isn't as much conversation around it. Like women typically come to the table much quicker than men do, and men very often kind of bottle it up or leave it until
it's sad, but the stigma is huge. Men are up to 10 times more likely to take their own life than a woman. And, that's not because of an inherent biological difference in men. We're just, it's like the quote I love is that society craves men to speak, but trains them to be silent. And I think that's probably the most powerful way of putting it. We have a society that cultures men to be stiff upper lip, be quiet, be a big man, don't cry, don't show weakness, be tough. And then when they're at their weakest point, when they're struggling to, even get up in the morning, how can they unlearn everything that you've taught them throughout their lives and ask for help? Whereas women, we tell them to talk, to be emotional, to share, to be in community, to be open. And therefore, when they struggle, first of all, they don't find it as hard and they do it a lot quicker. Exactly as you said, they come to the table much quicker. Men, if they come to the table, come when they've been suffering for years. I've had men message me saying, I've suffered with crippling depression quietly and silently for 10 years, and only today I've decided it's enough. Why have we got men suffering for 10 years? What a waste of life to suffer for so long before getting help. I mean, I've had men coming into A&E when I worked in the hospital there. I've stopped working in the hospital now to focus on everything that I do, but they're coming in going, I'm at my wit's end. I feel suicidal. I feel very dark. I'm like, how long have you felt dark? And they commonly say years. How long, if one of you hurt your ankle, how long would you wait before you go and get the doctor to look at it? Like a week or something? If you're walking, your ankle is hurt, you go, maybe a few days?
If I knew it was serious, it could be hours.
Yeah, you go straight away. But, people are feeling so dark that it's just ruining their lives and they sit quiet for years. And I think that's the reality that we have to realize. And the reason metal is something I'm so passionate about is because it's not just about building mental fitness, which is huge, but it's also getting people in tune to know, okay, like something isn't quite right. My scores, because you put in scores and stuff into the app and how you're feeling and stuff, and you put your mood in. And when you're seeing like red each day and hang on, your mood is low for the last 3 days, it's saying to you, right, come on, let's work this out. What's going on? And if we can't work it out, get help. And that's what I want people to do, is realize actually you shouldn't tolerate feeling really low for any length of time. Obviously, we go through difficult times. Obviously, there's times in life where something happens and we're going to grieve, or we feel bad, or we feel down. But feeling down for no good reason, or feeling down for a long time without seeing improvement, is not something that we should tolerate. And I just, I can't remove suffering from everyone's life. You will both know and experience times of hardship. Suffering is inevitable in life, but life shouldn't be defined by suffering. We should have happiness and joy and good days and ability to go out and make the most of our lives. And that's what we should focus on with our children. And that's why I think, like, if you build children and young people's mental fitness, you'll have a knock-on effect on the rest of society. We'll have a kinder population, we'll have a happier population and a successful population. And I do a lot of work with schools and education. And, one of the studies it shows this very powerfully, looked at happiness and school results. And they found that children that had good well-being structures in the school, had good 360-degree views of well-being and mindfulness within the school, had better academic scores. They had higher academic scores than schools with little or no well-being focus. And they also had lower levels of absenteeism. So children stayed in school more and they did better. And another interesting survey found that schools with lots of well-being support for children had happier staff and higher staff retention. Because if you ask any teacher, what's the thing that scares you the most? They might joke about the exams and the exam boards coming in, but what they really will tell you is they worry about the mental health of their children, children at school. So all of a sudden, if you focus on this one thing, it affects the parents' lives, the teachers' lives, the children's lives, and they grow up to be adults that are more capable to deal with life.
And what state do you think children's mental health is now, like in the UK?
Difficult. It's a difficult place, but that's because of the past, not the present or the future. And the reason I say that is because the word crisis is used a lot. I think we're in a very difficult state. The reason that is the last 20, 30 years. But the changes we're making now, I think.
And what do you mean by the problems from the last 20, 30 years?
The way we viewed mental health up until 1961, it was illegal in the UK to take your own life. And what that meant is that anyone that tried to take their own life would get a criminal record. That's why we use the word, that's why the word has been used, committed suicide, which we should try and let go of. And I mean, lots of people use it and there's no judgment of that. And I've used it in the past. You commit murder, you commit theft, you commit robbery, you commit GBH. Do you commit murder? You don't commit a heart attack or commit cancer. And then what that tells you is that up until 1961, people were incarcerated. Think of the knock-on effect in society of that stigma. And that's what carries through. When people talk about stigma, think of that knocking through the generations. No wonder people are so ashamed about it. People used to try and bribe doctors not to put committed suicide on the death certificate because it would bring shame on the family. And we're not talking a long time ago here. My dad was born in 1958. He's 66 years old. So, those things, those attitudes take time to pass. And in the last 20 years, I think we've been very, very academically focused in schools, to the detriment in the UK. We don't actually score very highly compared to the rest of Europe. And we have some of the most academic focused versus well-being focused education systems. Whereas if we look at other parts of the world like Scandinavia and so on, and other parts of Europe where they have much more learn through play, much more mindful, much more nature-based and health-focused education, they do better education, and they have less incidences of mental illness. So what we want to see and what is happening, and hopefully is continue to happen, is that we're going to have a shift towards a more balanced system. Wales has made a huge step forward, much more than England at the moment. Wales now have what you call a for-purpose approach. And what that means is they've put one of the purposes of school life is to create happy and healthy and good children with good well-being. And the weighting of that importance is equal to academia. Now, sounds like a small thing, but it means a huge thing, because top-down, funding-wise, top-down school structure-wise is a game changer. Whereas in England, you've got maths, English, all these different things, mental health at the bottom. And it's profound. And that's not at the bottom because of the teachers. You ask any teacher and they're trying their best, doing everything they can, they really care about this. It's the system. And the system is what creates and cultivates the environment that children are in. So changes are coming. Our focus is changing. We are looking at changes in the curriculum. I think the awareness of this and how important it is changing. I think in the next 5 or 10 years, the changes that we're going to see coming through are going to make a huge difference. I mean, one of the projects I worked on was getting early support hubs funded for England. We've got the pilot hubs funded, where these will be walk-in support for under 25-year-olds, so they get instant access to support, and they'll also be there to build.
Is that financial support or what? Or is that
yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned it. Everything. So these early support hubs will feel like a cafe vibe, youth club kind of hybrid place, where you've got youth workers as a center point, and you have like other support services such as psychologists and so on, as well as advisors, career advisors. So young people can go in and be like, I'm struggling with my home life, or I'm worried about career, or I'm struggling with my mental health, or if you're lonely. And these hubs will provide a center point to help that young person get them into a good place. They also, some of the ones that have started have, kayaking attached to them, art, sport, music, community, to get young people back into the community. So some of these projects that with looking at the education system and thinking of ways of building young people's mental health will have a knock-on effect. But right now, the numbers are bad because of what's happened. But what we have to focus on is dealing with some of the challenges, obviously, that are here, but also what about the future? Like, how do we change the now and what's going on right now to change the future? That's what I really want to focus on. We've got to help the young people that are struggling right now. We have to, but also we can't just carry on doing the same thing. Einstein's theory of madness, repeating the same thing and expecting a different.
What about like anyone listening who's a parent and going, okay, well, I absolutely don't want my child to, go through real hardships as they become a young adult, and an adult obviously getting to the root of the mental health issue is really, it starts at young, forming good habits and instilling things. Like, what advice would you give to any parent out there that's gone, right, I really want the best for my kid's mental health. I really want to manage it so that as they grow up, they feel secure, they feel supported, they have good habits. Like, what advice do you give to teachers and parents?
Well, one of the things I've worked on, and I wrote my first children's book was called A Better Day, which won Children's Book of the Year for nonfiction last year. And I wrote that book to be the book that every young person needs to build mental fitness, to build their health, to know how to deal with stress of things like exams, to deal with things like bullying, but also to how to build good relationships, develop healthy relationship with food, exercise, self-love. All of these things are captured in my book, A Better Day. And recently, only a week or so ago, A Better Day journal was published. So that was the
it looks cool. It looks beautiful. There's great imagery and great it looks very interactive. It doesn't just look like a lot of blank pages.
I'm really proud of it. So the Better Day was the real theory and teaching them the ideas, and there is activities, a lot of activities in that book, but the journal's then bringing that to life with, real world activities that work, that are tried and tested, from things like early journaling methods to, mindfulness activities to help like reframe negative thinking and stuff. And the two books obviously make a good partnership. Both can be used standalone. I really recommend you put them on the bedside. I was out for lunch 2 days ago I had lunch just myself. You're talking about dating yourself or going out on your own. Like, I love doing that. I had Rolo with me, and I sat down, and this lady came up. She was in the kind of I think late 30s or maybe 40s, and she said, "Can I sit with you for a moment?" I said, "Yeah, sure, have a sit." And she said that she had a young son who was like 12 or 13, and he seemed fine, like normal and all this kind of stuff. One day he'd come downstairs and said, "Look, I've read this book, and I just want to admit, say that I'm really struggling. I feel really dark and difficult." And he'd read my book, A Better Day, and I talk in there about the importance of understanding how to reach out. And she basically was quite emotional, actually. She was quite like teary and just said like, "Thank you," because like if it wasn't for that, perhaps he wouldn't have talked to us. So, I think for any, just put the book down in the bedroom or put it on the bedside table, put it, somewhere they can see it and they can read it. And yeah, I mean, the book, the first book, it's 50 or 60,000 copies that have been bought of the book that was published last year, So A Better Day. And so many schools use it and stuff for resources. So please, check it out.
You write very well. You write really well. Like your captions on Instagram are very, you write beautifully, like very relatable and very of the people and encouraging. It's not ego based at all. Like it's like you're a good writer. So I'd imagine the book's very good.
I just try and I think things that come, I generally write from, this sounds cheesy, from the heart. Like most stuff I share, things that I've experienced and related to, and therefore they are personal and they feel that way because they are. I'm writing about stuff that I have been through and experienced. I didn't have the easiest time at school. A lot of it I think was probably to do with ADHD, but I experienced bullying and that kind of stuff. And I just always try and put myself in that position, like what was it like? What did that person need? And I wrote A Better Day as the book that I wish I had. In the same way as the Mind Manual, the adult book that I've written.
And what age is the kids' book for? Like A Better Day, is that for?
I would say if with parental health, 8 or 9, but then all the way up to kind of 13 or 14. But I've had, depends on the kind of reading ability and so on. The journal is very, very much more flexible because I think it's so much as activity based. So you could be like a strong 8-year-old reader all the way up to kind of 14 or 15.
But it'd probably work for an adult as well, I'd imagine, because we all have an inner child, and it's probably simple and easy and colourful and bright and not kind of too...
Well, I have had so many parents say, stop calling it children's book, because if you haven't learned it before, then it's for us as well. And for social media has changed so much, in the last couple of years of the parents, like if they understand how to manage, and how to support young people, then that helps them as well. So it just really surprised me how many parents have come back to me and said, actually, I found it really helpful because if I understand, I can help support them better as well as them reading the book. So yeah, it's been incredible, really. And yeah, I must say it's very rewarding when someone messages you. I've got a few DMs I've screenshotted and kept just to kind of look back on in life, and just some messages where people have said like the difference it's made, and with the Mind Manual for adults and stuff, the messages they've sent, about using that the Mind Manual is all about mental fitness for adults, and the messages I've had, it does stay with you, like it makes a difference, and it does inspire you to kind of keep going,
Yeah, brilliant. On the topic of social media, I think this is a really, like, as ourselves, we're in a similar space where it's a double-edged sword. It's a wonderful tool, opportunity to connect, opportunity to inspire, and it's also like dealing with an addictive drug. It's something that draws you in. I know when I'm on TikTok, I literally will post something and I will close the app as soon as it's like, it's just gonna suck me in. How do you yourself find that balance, and how do you advocate that in a space when, different research will say that social media is not good for our mental health? Full stop.
So it's interesting. Social media, first of all, isn't going anywhere. So the question of like, should we have it or not? I mean, you could not have social media accounts, of course, but in terms of as a population-wide thing, it's not going anywhere. So it's really important to think about how do we use it well and healthily. The evidence is quite mixed. Social media, there's as much evidence that says social media helps people as doesn't help them. And if you think about it this way, so when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I had more benefit and more help and more psychological safety, to be honest, and comfort from social media and the communities, the ADHD community and so on there, than I did from any NHS website or support. And that's just being honest. Like that's where I found the most support. Even the mental health space, like I get so much help watching other people's accounts, feeling inspiration, feeling comfort than I do elsewhere. But equally, I've had some of the most sadness where I've had negative stuff that the message to you, or you've seen stuff that's upsetting. Like I hate seeing content on there that's upsetting or horrible because it makes you feel so bad. So what I'm trying to say is that there's two real sides to it. One thing the evidence does show that's there's two things that there's lots of things that evidence shows, but there's two things that really stand out to me that there is real strong evidence for, and that's screen time and managing what you're seeing. So when you look at studies, the longer someone is on their phone each day, there's a sudden, after an hour or so, there's a spike and an upward trend of psychological symptoms. So the longer you're online, the more likely to feel anxious, sad, low, depressed, unhappy, and so on, which makes sense, right? Because partly the longer you're online, the more likely you are to see harmful content or just feel those effects or whatever.
And is that social media in general, like
social media in general?
So
social media in general, and if you spend more than a couple of hours. But the big thing as well is that the longer you're on social media for, the less you're doing positive things that will build your mental health, right? You know, that idea of, like, we're talking about the resources and demands. Like, if you're spending 3 hours a day on social media, that's 3 hours where you're not outside, you're not with family, you're not exercising, you're not resting, you're not topping up your cup, reading a book and doing things you enjoy. So it's not just being online is harmful, it's how much it takes you away from other things. And an interesting fact is that on average in the UK, people spend 4 hours a day on social media. If you slept 8 hours a day and you're at work 8 hours a day, that's taking up quite a lot of your free time if you're doing 4 hours a day. So the big tip on screen time is, for God's sake, have a screen time limit on your phone. I've got one. I allow an hour a day on social media. I do, and if I go past the hour on my phone, I click like allow 15 minutes. And you might think, well, what's the point if you're doing that? But it's telling me constantly you've used it. So if you're going to use it more, then use it for a specific reason, like say I'm posting something or I'm doing some comments or whatever. But it's cognitive. I know that I'm spending time, and the screen time thing has helped me so much. I've like halved my screen time. I probably spend 2 hours a day now. So an hour is allowed. Then after I'm hitting the 15 minutes, I allow 2 hour a day. And given that's, you know, like you guys, a big part of my job, that's pretty good, right? The other thing I would say is thinking about who you follow. So harmful content, right? The biggest tip is here, look at your settings on TikTok and social media. Make sure you've got a high level of sensitivity for protection against harmful content. You can look at that in your settings. You can change your Instagram to protect you from harmful content. So it'll filter out anything that's harmful, horrible to see. That's the first thing. Second thing I would do is just go through your followers and see, as in the people you follow, and think, do these people inspire me, motivate me, teach me something, or make me happy? If they don't, unfollow them. And even at worst, if they make you feel bad, definitely unfollow them. And people might go, common question, oh, what about if it's someone I kind of know? I don't really know that well, but I might see them out and about. I don't want to unfollow them. They'll think it's rude. Then mute them. You can mute their posts and stories. So they don't know that you don't see it. You just blocking at your end. And I would say that's one of the most profound things to do. If you're going to spend 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day on social media, fill it full of things that enrich your life. You know, mine is like, I love my sport. So I love football. I've got Formula One on there. I follow accounts with a lot of positivity. I love quotes and mindfulness and stuff. So I follow those kind of things. I follow, you know, stuff that makes me feel good. Like, I've got no time for following stuff that makes me compare myself or makes me feel bad. So those two big tips I would say to people: screen time and manage who you're following. And a good trick to use is at the first of every month, because we often accumulate people who follow. The first every month or every 3 or 4 months, put a little reminder in your diary to go through your followers and unfollow. Otherwise, you'll subconsciously start adding together more followers. You start, oh, yeah, I'll follow them, I'll follow them. Before you know it, you're following people again that make you feel bad, you know, because that way our tendency is to repeat things, right? We often repeat behaviors unless we really tackle them. So those things can really help, I think. But ultimately, social media, it is here to stay, but make sure you use it for you. It's a tool. We should be using it for us, not against us.
Great.
Yeah,
advice.
I like that. Really, really practical. Final question, Alex, is how do you find the balance between the importance of typical growth occurs when there's adversity, when there's struggle that you have to overcome? And often that's where we get a kind of sustained feeling of satisfaction. You know, you've had to go through a challenge. So how do you balance, or even what are your thoughts on this, the balance between the needs for discomfort and overcoming it, and also accepting yourself where you're at, self-love, comfort, look after yourself, all these issues? How do you balance that dichotomy, because they seem two opposites?
I think you have your chosen discomforts in life, and you have your unchosen discomforts, don't you? Like there's things that happen to you, obviously, like things with my brother is very extreme, but there's lots of things that'll happen to you in life that you'd never choose. The things we have to overcome, like heartbreak, breakups. You might be in a relationship and have to go through a breakup. You don't necessarily, you might have chosen it, might would have ended the relationship, you might not, but they're your kind of discomforts that no one really would want, and we build our resilience to deal with those. But then we also have our chosen discomfort. So, you know, I'm doing a master's in public mental health. I've chosen to to put myself through exams and essays in my 30s, and sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? But I know at the end of that challenge I'll feel really good. And, you know, in September, October, I finished it. And I know that I'll feel great because I'll have learned a lot. It will have challenged me. I'll grown from it and I feel good. That's a chosen discomfort. Now, as I said, we can't really control necessarily our unchosen discomforts. So what we need to do is manage based on what we have on our plate, how many chosen things that we do. And what I mean by that really is just thinking like, we don't know what's around the corner and we shouldn't, you know, live life afraid of things that might happen. But also it's making sure you've got something left in the cup. You know, if you're stretching yourself to the limit with loads of different projects, what if something else gets thrown in the works? What if there's a financial difficulty? What if there's something, you know, an added thing that happens that you now need to deal with? You've got nothing left. There's no reserve. It's like living every month, spending all of your money up to the last pound. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people have to do that because that's the challenges. But if you can, then trying to save a bit back allows you to have that buffer, doesn't it? I think it's the same with your energy. And then balancing that really with like, do you need to have, is what's too much and what's too little? I mean, it's good to have challenges, but it's also great to feel at peace. Like, I think my biggest thing in the next few years is I just want to feel at peace. Like, I want to have a balance between challenges, but also just enjoying being able to sit with myself, spend time with friends, just be, you know, happy and stuff. So yeah, I guess the question is the why. Like if you're doing something because you want to and you want the challenge, that's cool, but just don't do it to prove stuff to other people. Just do it for yourself. You know, that's probably the most likely way that people end up in situations they're taking on too much is because they're trying to do it for other people too much. You know what I mean? So balance, you know, enjoy a challenge, enjoy self-care, and know that when you do face those unchosen challenges that you can get through, but get help. Don't do it alone. Like you guys got each other and also your families, of course. Like it's so important to have each other. I mean, it's my assistant, Abby, she's a twin, and she said like, you just got each other, you know, you're there, you got each other's back. But, you know, not everyone, you know, I'm not a twin, but I've got I've got my brother and I've got my friends, you know, lean on other people. You know, you don't need to deal with challenges alone, do you?
Very good advice. Beautiful. Any closing thoughts just to leave anyone for 2024 on kind of just the pillars of mental health and a tiny little, you know, motivational wrap up?
Yeah,
Go
sure.
on, Alex.
You got this.
Oh, have I got
like
this?
a crescendo. Come on.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think, you know, I love your energy. And when I met you and stuff, I thought, you know, you're really good people. I really enjoyed your company. It's amazing.
Likewise.
It's a pleasure. Likewise. You got to come visit.
Thank you so much. And I mean, what I'd say to people is that, you know, make 2024 the year of mental fitness. You know, make it the year that you put your mind first, and everything else will follow. You know, be kind to yourself, be compassionate, enjoy the things that are ahead of you, but know that when you do face those difficult times, that you can get through. You know, the reason I wrote the title "A Better Day" for the book is that I constantly say to myself that there's always hope of a better day. So no matter what you face, things do get better. This too shall pass. Work on yourself a little bit each day, and that'll build up to a big change in the year ahead. Enjoy 2024. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're a star.
Thanks, Alex. You really are.
Beautiful. Thanks, Alex. That was great.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And
Cheers,
come
Alex.
visit anytime, please.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye. Bye.
While we have you, once a week we write a newsletter. It's called Happier. It's got simple, tried and tested practices to make your life better. We include recipes and practices that you can apply on a daily basis to make your life happier. We've had lots of people say before that it's really helped make their life better. So you can sign up on the happypear.ie, our weekly newsletter called Happier.